You know that feeling when you check your bank account after payday and somehow it is already almost gone? You did not buy anything crazy. No vacation, no shopping spree, just rent, groceries, gas, insurance, the basics. And you are sitting there thinking, I make decent money. Where is it all going? You are not imagining that. Something has actually changed. Not in one big dramatic moment. There was no crash, no breaking news alert. No one told you the rules were different now, but they are. The cost of just being alive in America got quietly repriced over the last few years, and most people have not fully realized what that means for them yet. Not just for people struggling, for people doing everything right, working full-time, paying their bills, making more than they used to, and still falling behind. What is happening underneath the surface is bigger than inflation, bigger than interest rates, bigger than any single headline. Let me show you what I mean. Look at the surface right now. Everything looks fine. Unemployment is not catastrophic. GDP has not fallen off a cliff. Malls have customers, airports are packed. The stock market opens every morning like nothing happened. If you only looked at the big numbers, you would think everything is working. But here is the problem. Those numbers are a photograph. What is actually happening requires a time lapse. Underneath that calm surface, the basic architecture of everyday financial life has been repriced, quietly, permanently. While most people were not paying attention, inflation cooled from its peak, yes. But the cost of everything essential is still elevated. Growth has slowed. Household debt is pushing records. Interest rates are far higher than anything we saw in the decade before 2020. Any one of those alone does not scream disaster, but stack them together. Watch how they feed into each other, and they reveal something much bigger than a recession, a permanent recalibration. This is not the downturn your parents warned you about. This is a structural shift in how money, risk, opportunity, and security move through the American system. The cost of holding your position is going up. The room to make a mistake is shrinking. And upward mobility is becoming something you qualify for rather than something you can assume. To see where this is heading, you have to look past the headlines, into the machinery underneath. Because the most consequential economic shifts never announce themselves. They just quietly redraw the ground beneath you. Until staying where you are takes more effort, more money, and more strategy than getting ahead ever used to. The erosion of purchasing power. It does not look like a crisis. No rationing cards, no bread lines, no empty shelves. The disruption is far more subtle and far more persistent. It shows up in something you feel every week. The slow erosion of what your dollar actually buys. At the grocery store, at the gas pump, when you sit down to pay your bills. Here is where most people get confused. They hear inflation came down from its peak, and they assume prices went back to normal. That is not what happened. Prices stopped rising as fast. But the increases that already happened did not reverse. They became the new floor. Think of it this way. The thermometer dropped from 104 to 99. Everyone acted like the fever broke. But 99 is still a fever, and the body is still weakened. Let me make this real. The Garcias, suburban Ohio, 2 working parents, 2 school-age kids, combined income around $90,000 a year. Before 2020, their budget had enough room to handle a surprise car repair or an unexpected medical bill. They could save a few hundred a month without it hurting. They were not rich, but they were stable. And for the middle class, stable used to be enough. Today, that same family earns a bit more on paper. Wages went up. On a chart, it looks like progress. But here is what the chart does not show you. Their rent jumped nearly 20% over 3 years. Car insurance climbed. Groceries cost more every single week. Utilities crept up. Health insurance premiums went up while the deductible also rose. Each increase looks small on its own. Together, they have completely changed what $90,000 actually does for a family of four. And here is the part that matters most. Their wage growth has not kept up with the cumulative rise in the things they cannot stop buying: housing, insurance, utilities, healthcare, transportation. You cannot unsubscribe from your electric bill. You cannot cancel your commute. You cannot opt out of feeding your kids. When these non-negotiable costs rise faster than your income, you do not feel it all at once. You feel it as a slow compression. Each month, the walls move a little closer, and you start making choices you never expected to make. The Garcias pushed back their plan to move to a bigger home. They are hanging on to a 10-year-old minivan because a new car payment does not fit the budget anymore. They skipped a dental checkup last year, not because they forgot, because it was the one expense they felt they could cut. They dropped one after-school class per semester for the kids, small change, but you feel it. From the outside, their life does not look like a crisis. It looks normal, but it is a tighter, more fragile version of normal. And tight systems break in ways that loose ones never do. Now. That compression you just saw in the Garcia's life connects directly to something most people have not recognized yet. Something happening to credit right now that is changing what debt actually means in this economy. And what it is turning into should worry you. Credit as a lifeline, not a tool. For most of American history, credit worked a certain way. It was a bridge. You borrowed to cover a gap between paychecks. You financed a car or a fridge and paid it off over time. The debt had a start and a finish, a purpose and an end. That is changing. And almost nobody is talking about what it is changing into. Household debt has hit near record highs. Credit card balances have surged. And average interest rates now sit above 20%. Let that sit for a second. A $3,000 balance at 22%, carrying minimum payments, can take years to clear and cost you several times the original amount. Delinquencies are starting to tick up. Not dramatically yet, but noticeably. And the increase is showing up in a group that should get your attention. Middle-income borrowers who used to have clean records. These are not irresponsible people. These are people whose math stopped working. But here is the part that matters more than the dollar amounts. It is not just how much people owe, it is what they are borrowing for. American households are increasingly putting groceries on credit cards, insurance premiums, prescriptions, car repairs, heating bills, not vacations. Not electronics, the essentials. The things you cannot skip, negotiate, or cancel. Think about what that means. When credit stops funding wants and starts funding needs, something fundamental has changed. It is no longer a financial tool. It is financial infrastructure, no longer accelerating lifestyle, maintaining survival. And these balances do not go away. They roll over month after month because the gap between what people earn and what life costs has not closed. There is no finish line. High interest rates make this worse in a way that compounds fast. When carrying debt costs more, every dollar you owe grows quicker. But if your basic expenses already exceed your income, what is the alternative? Savings are thin. Survey after survey shows a huge share of Americans cannot cover even a modest emergency, a car repair, a medical copay, without a credit card. And this is where a feedback loop forms. Balances go up, minimum payments go up, credit utilization goes up, which pushes your score down. Lower scores raise your insurance, your loan rates, sometimes even make it harder to rent an apartment, and those higher costs mean you need to borrow more. Nobody made a reckless decision. They just lived in a system where the floor kept rising faster than their paycheck could follow. At some point, you are not using credit anymore. Credit is using you. And the real cost is not just money, it is options. A household buried in high-interest debt cannot move for a better job, cannot invest in training, cannot absorb a medical surprise without spiraling deeper. The tools designed to give you choices start taking them away, one by one. When this happens to millions of households at once, the whole system gets more fragile. Not from one big failure, but because the collective margin for error has gotten so thin that a single bad month, a car breaking down the same week a medical bill hits, can set off a chain reaction that would have been absorbed easily just a few years ago. All right, let us step back for a second. So far, we have seen how daily costs are compressing budgets and how credit is quietly shifting from a tool into a lifeline. Those two forces are already working together. But most people assume there is still one reliable escape hatch. Buy a home, build equity, get on the wealth ladder. Something unexpected happened there too, and it is not what anyone predicted. The housing freeze. For years, people expected a correction. Prices surged too fast. Rates climbed too high. Something had to give. Affordability was collapsing. Demand would buckle. Prices would fall. The market would reset. That is not what happened. Instead of correcting, the housing market froze. And a frozen market might actually be worse than a crashing one. The force behind this freeze has a name: the lock-in effect. It is one of the most powerful dynamics shaping American life right now, and almost nobody is talking about it. In 2020 and 2021, the Fed pushed borrowing costs to historic lows. Millions of homeowners refinanced at rates between 2 and 3%. Those were anomalies, products of emergency policy. They were never meant to last. But the mortgages attached to them were 30-year commitments. Now, with rates dramatically higher, those homeowners face an impossible choice. Selling and buying another home, even the same size, same value, would mean giving up that low rate, accepting a mortgage that could cost double in monthly interest. Same loan, same house, twice the payment. So they stay, millions of them, in homes they have outgrown, in neighborhoods that no longer fit, in cities where their industry moved on. They stay because moving costs too much. And here's what that does to everyone else. When owners do not sell, inventory shrinks. Fewer listings means fewer sales. Prices may dip slightly in spots, but limited supply blocks any real correction. People waiting for affordability to return are standing at a door that will not open wide. Enough. Take Priya, 32, nurse practitioner in North Carolina, saving for a down payment for 4 years, good credit, stable job, low debt. On paper, she is exactly who the system is built for. But in her market, the median home combined with current rates means a monthly payment nearly 40% higher than what the same house cost 5 years ago. She is not priced out by her income. She is priced out by the math. And the math is not improving fast enough. She is not alone. First-time buyers everywhere face affordability ratios near the worst in decades. The monthly cost of owning a median home has created a wall wages have not come close to matching. The result is stalled mobility on a generational scale. Young households delay buying. Families stay in starter homes way past their plans. Workers turn down offers in other cities because moving means giving up a rate they will never see again. Geographic flexibility, one of America's greatest economic strengths, is fading in real time. And here is the deeper consequence almost nobody talks about. Home ownership is not just shelter. For the middle class, it has been the main wealth-building engine for generations. When access gets delayed 5 or 10 years, the effects on lifetime wealth are real. Equity builds slower. Retirement shifts back. The ability to help the next generation weakens. A crash would have hurt, but it would have been a reset. Prices drop. Buyers enter. The market finds a new floor. A freeze gives you no reset. It is quieter, but possibly more damaging because there is no clear end. It locks people in place and drains the economic dynamism this country has always run on. When housing becomes less accessible and less mobile at the same time, opportunity shrinks. Not in ways a single number captures, but in ways that reshape millions of lives over decades. Okay, take a breath. We have covered costs, credit, and housing. Three forces pressing in from different directions. But most people still believe one thing is shielding them through all of it: their job. The employment numbers look solid, right? Those numbers are hiding something. The labor market mirage. Official reports say the job market is resilient. Unemployment is low. Jobs are being added. By the headlines, workers are doing fine. But here's a distinction almost nobody makes clearly. Stability and security are not the same thing. An economy can post strong employment numbers while quietly hollowing out the quality of that employment. And that is exactly what is happening. Hiring has slowed relative to population growth. Companies are not rushing to fill spots anymore. When people leave, many firms just do not replace them, or they wait. Job postings sit open longer, not because demand is strong, because employers are careful with every payroll dollar. In fields like finance, media, and tech, quiet layoffs have rolled on month after month. Not the kind that make news, the kind that look like a department shrinking 10%, a division restructured, cuts labeled strategic reorganization. People disappear from their roles without anyone noticing. What happens to them next is where the real story is. Marcus, 41, product manager in tech, 14 years of experience, good reviews, steady promotions. When his role got cut, he figured he would find something similar within a few months. Current skills, strong resume, healthy market according to the data. He searched for 8 months. The available roles paid 20% less, required moves he could not afford, or had been expanded to cover work that used to be split across 2 or 3 people. He was not chasing a dream job. He wanted an equivalent one. That equivalent had quietly disappeared. He eventually took something. Lower title, less pay, fewer opportunities ahead. He is not unusual. This pattern is playing out across white-collar America. The labor market is not producing mass unemployment. It is producing friction. Longer searches, fewer real options, wage growth that cannot keep up with what it costs to live. Underneath that, something structural is changing. Contract work, temp roles, and project-based gigs are expanding everywhere. AI and automation boost output but shift leverage from workers to employers. Technology does not always kill jobs. It merges them. 3 roles become 2. 2 become 1.5. The people left do more with less help. This creates a different kind of instability. Not unemployment, income volatility. Raises are harder to get when your employer knows the work could be restructured without you. Careers compress. The time a specific skill stays valuable keeps shrinking because tools evolve so fast. The mental toll is heavy. Workers get cautious. Starting a business feels risky when a steady paycheck and employer health insurance are all that stand between you and real exposure. People stay in jobs they have outgrown because the alternative feels unpredictable. They accept conditions they never would have 5 years ago. The cost of leaving went up. The certainty of landing went down. An economy can report low unemployment while quietly draining real security from its workforce. The numbers look fine. The reality underneath them does not. And there is one more pressure that sits apart from everything else. Because it mixes unpredictability, emotional weight, and financial scale in a way nothing else does. Healthcare as financial risk. American healthcare has always been expensive. That is not new. What changed is the degree to which it has become a source of financial uncertainty instead of protection. Premiums keep climbing, but deductibles have risen even faster, often outpacing wages. For a growing number of workers, having insurance does not mean being covered from big costs. It means being partially covered, with a gap wide enough to blow up your household budget from a single medical event. David and Elaine, late 50s, Michigan, both working. Both insured through David's employer. When Elaine needed an unexpected surgery, the bill exceeded their deductible by thousands. Even with insurance, the out-of-pocket costs wiped out their emergency fund in one shot. The remaining balance went on a credit card at over 20%. Surgery went well. Elaine recovered. The financial recovery took over a year. A health crisis that lasted days became a money problem that lasted months. This is not rare. Medical debt is still one of the top drivers of collections and credit damage in America. Insured families pile up balances from deductibles, out-of-network charges, and coverage gaps they did not know about until a claim hit. And unlike other expenses, healthcare costs are almost never optional and almost never predictable. They show up when you are most vulnerable, during illness, injury, fear. That mix of surprise and emotional urgency makes medical bills uniquely destabilizing. The effects ripple outward. Workers stay in jobs they want to leave because they cannot lose employer coverage. People with business ideas put them on hold because going without group insurance feels like a gamble. Older workers delay retirement to avoid the gap before Medicare. Healthcare is not reducing uncertainty. It is adding a whole new layer of it. Families now plan not just for regular bills, but for the chance of a sudden, large expense that wipes out whatever cushion they have built. When your physical health is tangled up with your financial health, every plan gets shorter. Risk tolerance drops. The system gets more cautious, and a cautious system grows slower. Let us pause here. We have now walked through 5 forces: rising costs, credit strain, frozen housing, weakening job security, healthcare risk, each one serious on its own. But there is a layer underneath all of them, a divergence accelerating in the background that decides whether these pressures feel manageable or crushing. The widening divide. Income. Inequality in America is not new, but the engine driving it has changed. Over the past decade, asset prices delivered huge returns. Stocks climbed. Real estate after 2020 surged in ways that transformed balance sheets overnight. Families who already owned portfolios or property watched their wealth grow, not just from paychecks, from the assets themselves. Capital gains became a second wealth engine, running alongside wages, but producing much bigger returns for anyone with access. On the other side, a very different story. Households built entirely on wages saw incomes rise in dollar terms. But those gains got eaten by rising costs. No assets meant no second engine, no compounding, no wealth building quietly in the background. Every dollar earned through work. Every dollar spent from the same work. This is not just a gap. It is a cycle that feeds itself. Asset owners borrow cheaper, build stronger credit, have more flexibility, reinvest, compound. They have options. Wage-dependent families face tighter margins, higher rates, fewer chances to build anything that grows on its own. And every year, the distance between these two groups gets wider. Here is the hard part. Moving between these tiers is getting harder. It increasingly takes one of 3 things: early capital, usually family money, a specialized skill that commands premium pay, or lucky timing, buying into markets at exactly the right moment. Without at least one, progress is slow, incremental, the kind that feels more like treading water. And this changes something deeper than finances. It changes how people think. When hard work feels like it leads somewhere, people take chances. Start companies, go back to school, move cities. When advancement feels like it depends on things outside your control, when you were born, what your parents had, whether you bought before rates doubled, something shifts. People stop reaching and start protecting, preserving what they have instead of going after more. Scale that across tens of millions of households, and it changes the whole economy. Spending shifts, business creation slows, long-term investments get shelved. Growth numbers might still look fine, but who that growth actually reaches is a different story. Now, you might be thinking, at least the government can step in if it gets bad enough. Rate cuts, stimulus, safety nets. That is how it has always worked. But there is a problem with that assumption in 2026, the shrinking policy toolbox. In past downturns, government stepped in, rates got slashed, checks went out, spending expanded. The net caught people before they hit bottom. Not perfect, but it worked. That safety net is thinner now than it has been in decades. Federal debt has grown substantially. Servicing it costs far more with rates this high. Interest payments take a bigger slice of the budget every year, meaning fewer dollars for programs, infrastructure, or emergency response. When the government is spending more just to service what it already owes, there is less room to respond to whatever comes next. Demographics are tightening too. Fewer working-age Americans per retiree every year. Social Security and Medicare face real long-term pressure. Adjustments to eligibility, benefits, or taxes are getting more likely, not less. Monetary policy is equally stuck. Cut rates too fast and you risk bringing inflation back. Keep them high and growth stays slow. Borrowing stays expensive and the squeeze continues. Policymakers are balancing price stability, employment, debt sustainability, and political reality all at once. There is no single lever that fixes all of it. The bottom line is simple. The government's ability to rescue the economy from the next shock is smaller than before. Households and businesses may need to lean more on their own savings, their own flexibility, their own ability to adapt. When both public and private sectors are running with less room to move at the same time, even small, disruptions hit harder. It does not take a catastrophe, just the steady stacking of pressures without the ability to relieve them. The convergence. Here is where it all connects. This convergence, not any single force, is what defines the real economic moment we are in. Individually, each pressure looks manageable. Budgets get adjusted, workers retrain, businesses adapt, policymakers shift. The system absorbs each hit and keeps going. Americans are resourceful. That has always been true, but these forces are not hitting one at a time. They are hitting together, across every income level, every region, and they are feeding each other. Rising costs squeeze margins. Weak bargaining power holds wages down. Flat real wages push spending onto credit. Debt compounds and kills flexibility. Frozen housing blocks mobility and wealth building. Healthcare drops unpredictable costs at the worst moments. Asset inequality widens the gap between those compounding and those holding on. And limited policy tools mean less help when the pressure gets too heavy. Each one feeds the next. That is the system now. Getting through it takes precision. A stable job is necessary, but might not be enough. Access to assets matters more than ever. Managing debt without a slip becomes critical at these rates. Dodging a health crisis, a layoff, an unplanned move is no longer just smart planning. For a growing number of families, it is the difference between staying afloat and going under. 10 years ago, a setback was recoverable. The system had enough cushion to absorb the hit and let you recover. Now, with thinner margins and higher costs, recovery takes longer. Compounding works both ways. Gains build, but so do losses. And losses stack faster when there is no room left. Opportunity has not disappeared, but it has become more conditional than at any point in recent memory. Where you live shapes what you can afford. Your education shapes your income for decades. When you got into asset markets, decides if you are building wealth or chasing it. Whether you have capital decides if you invest or borrow. When the margin for error tightens, behavior shifts everywhere at once. Young adults delay big decisions. Families form later. Workers pick safety over ambition. Risk-taking becomes calculated, not bold. The system still runs. Markets open. Jobs exist. Homes change hands. But the underlying belief that steady effort and smart decisions naturally lead to a better life, that belief feels less automatic than it did a generation ago. And when it fades, the economy does not collapse. It calcifies. This is not a story about collapse. It is a story about repricing. And repricing, while quieter than a crash, can be just as transformative over time. Maybe more so. Because it does not demand your attention. It just moves forward. The economy is not breaking in one event. It is recalibrating. Slowly. Structurally. On every front at once. Stability costs more. Flexibility takes more work. Resilience demands an awareness that was not necessary when margins were wider, rates were lower, and the safety nets were stronger. When just holding your current standard of living takes more planning, more precision, and more careful choices than getting ahead used to, daily life starts to feel different. Even when no headline says crisis, even when the unemployment number looks fine, even when the stores are open and the planes are full, the forces reshaping financial life in America are not sudden, not loud, they are cumulative. Inflation raised the floor on what it costs to exist. The labor market kept the appearance of health while hollowing out real security. Asset growth widened the gap between those building wealth and those just holding position. And the policy tools that used to catch people are more limited than at any point in recent memory. Together, these define the economic reality of 2026. Not as a coming disaster, but as a period of narrowing margins and structural adjustment that is already here. For millions of families, the middle-class squeeze is not something economists argue about anymore. It is something they live. In monthly budgets, in career choices driven by caution, in milestones that keep sliding further out. Seeing this clearly will not make it go away, but it gives you something back. The ability to plan with accuracy instead of assumption, to adjust before the constraints become permanent. If you have been feeling these shifts, if the math of your life feels harder than it should, if staying in place takes more effort than moving forward used to, you are not imagining it. The numbers back up what your gut already knows. The structure is changing. It has been for years, and it will keep changing whether you are watching or not. The only question is whether you are ready to move with it. Because in an economy that has been quietly repriced, the biggest risk is not making a wrong move. It is assuming the old rules still work.